Happiness is beautiful, it's a kind of reality. Happiness is the highest good, happiness is free. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.
Welcome to the Happiness Show. This is George Ortega, and I'm here to talk about happiness because happiness is, always has been, and always will be the point of it all. Today's topic is Ways of Becoming Happier number 8, and this is one of those shows where I simply go through a list of, important strategies and considerations for becoming happier. Okay, let's start off. The first one is to understand and value happiness. This is so important because this sets the stage for everything else. I think first off, you have to value it. You have to understand that happiness is the point of life. It's why we're here. It's why we do what we do on a daily basis. It's why we do what we do. When we plan long term, everything we do is designed to help us become happier. And this isn't just philosophical. This isn't cultural. It's not just something that's just as a product of our times. I mean, this is actually biological. We have a genetic predisposition to seek pleasure and avoid pain. That's what we do. That's naturally. There's a third component to that, which Freud called the reality principle, which really has to do with, we're not going to do something that's pleasant when it's going to cause long-term pain, or more pain than pleasure. And sometimes we'll engage in something that's perhaps somewhat painful in order to help us gain more overall happiness. But again, this is genetic. This is hereditary. It's our most fundamental motivation in life. And so there really is nothing more important in life than happiness. And you have to understand happiness. I mean, once you value it and know that it's really what life is about, then it is very wise to understand it, because once you understand it, you know what to do and not to do to seek it. There are many myths about happiness. For example, one myth is that if you seek happiness, that's the best way to lose it. Fortunately, there are experiments that demonstrate actually quite the reverse. In a very strong way. I mean, after 4 or 6 weeks of learning to become happier, students in various experiments, subjects, became about 25% happier. So really, just understanding that, what happiness is about. Like, for example, that above the poverty line, money doesn't really make for more happiness, and the other kinds of, considerations regarding happiness. That is really what would help us to kind of predict what is going to make us happiest and plan our life around those that understanding. Okay, the next thing is to smile. I mean, next to valuing and understanding happiness, I think smiling is probably the most powerful thing that you could do, because what happens is, on a biological, physiological level, when you smile, it just makes you feel better. It's interesting how they realized this. They conducted experiments where they had subjects put a pencil between their teeth, which activates the zygomatic muscles that are the smile muscles, and they had them read cartoons, and had them read material. They found that the people who had the pencil between their teeth and were actually smiling found the cartoons happier. Smiling is so important. It's not just because it creates that genetic, that instant pleasurable effect, but when you smile, it's a constant reminder that happiness is the point of your life, that it's important to feel happy, and it's so easy. It really reminds you, and it's possible to make your smile become habitual. And I'm not talking, when I say smiling, I'm not talking about a broad, bare teeth kind of smile. I'm talking about simply a pleasant facial expression. It could be, subtle. Think about it. Think about the happy people in your life. Generally, there are two things about them that you notice. One is that they tend to talk about pleasant things. You know, they don't they don't tend to like, you know, talk about their problems all the time, you know, because they know better than that. But the second thing is that they look happier. And when you think about it, the reason they look happier is because they have developed the habit of just wearing a pleasant facial expression, and that's all it is. Otherwise, you know, it would be hard to tell who's happy and who's not. It's really as simple as that pleasant expression that's manifested in a subtle smile. Okay, let's see. Another consideration is that, you know, when we go for our job, for a profession, for our livelihood, it's much wiser to work at something we love than to work for money's sake. According to the research, again, people who work at something they intrinsically desire, something that's meaningful to them, something that they enjoy doing, regardless of how much or little money they have, are generally happier than people who really are at jobs, you know, simply to make a lot of money. And it's kind of like an irony because people who actually work, who plan their careers to do what they love to do, actually end up making more money than those who seek money as their primary goal. And it's also let's see. So yeah, it's just like, you know, when you're planning your career and all, it's very important to just like, you know, seek happiness, and then the money will come. Okay, the next thing is to invest in relationships. According to the research, other people are our main source of happiness. I mean, you know, basically the very main source is our spouse or significant other. And, you know, it makes a lot of sense because generally we're social creatures. We like being with other people. We tend to smile more when we're with other people. We tend to laugh more. We tend to enjoy ourselves more, you know. So that to have a constant mate just makes that kind of social interaction that's so important and so beneficial to happiness just so much a part of one's life. So it's important to invest in relationships. I mean, you know, like a lot of people think of investing in terms of just like money or success, but you know, again, above the poverty line, you know, more money is not going to make one happier. So it doesn't make sense to just invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of energy in trying to make more money when simply one can just, you know, invest in the people in one's life. And that has to do with, again, I think some learning would be important. You know, it would be great if, like in school, we would learn how to get along with people. You know, maybe we'd have less than a 50% divorce rate. You know, maybe we'd be friendlier. We'd have more people in our lives. I think the United States today, I think a quarter of the people, you know, here live alone. I mean, you know, I think that's just it kind of like indicates that we're really not as good as getting along with each other as we possibly could be. And so that learning, you know, these basic relationship skills would really help in that way. So invest in our friends, you know, like rather than spending so much time, you know, going to work and then investing, then, you know, like either watching TV all night or just like being in a hobby just keeps us alone, you know, so much of the time. It's good to just develop the facility, just the ease to be able to like reach out to people and spend time with them. Okay, the next strategy would be to believe you can be very happy no matter what. This is very important. You know, many of us feel that, well, you know, if something happens, if certain situation happens, if I lose my job, if, you know, I lose my spouse, if you know, I lose a lot of money, whatever. People think that, you know, if certain things happen, then they are destined, you know, they have no choice but to lose their happiness along with that. That's not the case. Many people, it's just a matter of mindset. When we realize that even though there are certain things that we might have that we gain happiness from, that they're not absolutely essential to our happiness, and that includes other people, that includes a lot of things, then we can understand that our happiness is really not up to those things. It's really up to us. So it's just a matter of like saying to ourselves that yes, things can happen, but happiness is within us. It's something that's internal. It's kind of like it's an emotion, it's a feeling, and it's under our control. I mean, anytime we want to feel happier, we don't have to like have all these kinds of external sources that we may or may not keep. Just knowing that happiness is something that comes from within, and that it's entirely within our control, just gives us that confidence and that freedom to just accept life, the good and the bad, the lucky and unlucky, as it comes, and with the confidence that we can maintain our great happiness. Okay, the next skill is to practice cognitive determination. What I mean by that is basically our happiness is to a great extent dependent on our thoughts. And for most of us, thoughts happen to come into our minds, throughout each day. And if we're lucky, they tend to be pleasant thoughts, Many of us are like genetically predisposed to have more pleasant thoughts than others. Happiness is about 50% genetic. So some of us are very lucky from the onset. But again, sometimes we'll just have, pleasant or unpleasant thoughts. And the idea is that, they don't have to be just automatic. They don't have to just either come into our minds or not, just as they will. We can train our minds to habitually, more consistently think pleasant thoughts. And what cognitive determination is about is that it's a technique that I developed that simply, it's kind of like based on affirmations. And with regard to affirmations, Karen Hay, a New Zealand psychologist, did an experiment back in 1980, it was published, and she demonstrated that her subjects, after like repeating simple affirmations like, I'm going to have a great day, life feels good and stuff, for about 10 minutes each morning, after about 2 weeks, they became about 25% happier. So, affirmations are very powerful. So with cognitive determination, really, it's like, we practice things. If we have if we're a musician, we might practice the piano. We might practice, spend an hour on the piano each day or whatever. With cognitive determination, it's like taking time out to, what I recommend is like sit down with a pen and paper and just simply, as you're saying to yourself, I feel, write down, I feel great. I feel optimistic. I feel positive. I feel relaxed. I feel comfortable. Whatever words come into your mind. And you could also use the opposite of, I feel not upset. I feel not angry. I feel not fearful, whatever. The positive ones tend to sometimes feel a bit more pleasant, but both are very useful. And that's pretty much, the technique, and it works. After a while, the mind will just like kind of remember those thoughts and remember the feelings that it creates, and have much more of a tendency to create pleasant, positive thoughts on its own. Okay, if you want to learn more about this method, I explain it in more detail on the Ortega Happiness Method, which is on the website, www.thehappinessshow.com, and another episode that I explain it, much more on is the Apache Happiness Method, which is again another episode. Okay, another strategy for becoming happier is to believe that everything happens for the best. It's interesting. I just listened to a version of Voltaire's Candide, where apparently Voltaire didn't believe this. So he's got his characters. He's got a philosophy professor just teaching this guy Candide that they live in the best of all possible worlds, and that everything is happening for the best. But then Voltaire proceeds to create scene after scene after scene, chapter after chapter, where everything horrible that could happen to them happens. And quite interestingly, even at the very end of the book, they're still maintaining that everything does happen for the best. And the reality of this is like, there's no way that that can be proven. I mean, how, that's beyond proof. That's like, it's kind of like a perspective. But the key here is that when you believe that things happen for the best, you don't fear the future, and you look for the good in what happens. You see things as win-win situations. When something that you suspect might not be in your favor happens, you start wondering, well, how is it in my favor? What haven't I considered? Or you wait upon it to actually become manifest that's really in your best interest and all. So again, when you believe that everything happens for the best, it creates an optimism. It creates a fearlessness about life that, again, is very, very useful to feeling happy. Okay. Next one is to limit your TV viewing. I got to the point recently where I actually unplugged my cable from my TV because for some reason I was just like too tempted to watch. And there are like so many violent images. I like to surf, and it's hard to like surf through a whole series of shows without seeing somebody being killed or something. I mean, and a lot of TV is just negative. A lot of the news is negative. The news is more so much about problems than good stuff. And also with the problems, they often don't focus much on the solutions. They just like repeat the problem, ad nauseum. And so really, it's wise to just not watch too much TV. Okay, the next strategy is to compare wisely. Research has found that the happiest people, when they compare themselves to others, they don't compare themselves to people that have more than them. Let's say more money, more power, more prestige, more whatever. They compare themselves generally to people who have less. And the wisdom of that is like when you do that, you begin to feel gratitude for what you have. You begin to feel, whoa, I'm lucky. Look at all this that I have. And it kind of like almost obligates you to feel happy, to really appreciate what you have. And that just generally creates, very positive feelings. Okay. The next strategy is to understand and then limit the negative emotions you have. We have about six basic emotions: fear, anger, sadness, disgust, which are negative. Then surprise could be positive or negative, and then there's happiness, which is the positive emotion. Sometimes we can enjoy fear and we can enjoy anger, etc., but they tend to be negative. And the important thing to understand about these emotions is that they are not designed to be felt long term. I mean, here's the science of it. Basically, our minds react to the environment first on an emotional level and then on a cognitive or rational level. So what happens is, like, something happens, we see something, we perceive or hear something, and we get an emotional reaction to it. And let's say that emotional reaction is, for example, anger. Okay? So that anger, according to the research, is basically a reaction to something we perceive as unjust. Okay, it's something, we feel, hey, something's going on that's not right, that's not fair, that's not just, and that's what that reaction is about. Now, here's the key. Once we have felt that emotion, for that instant or so, then our cognitive processes come in and we begin to evaluate, is this really something that I should be angry about? If it's so, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? It's more of a rational cognitive process after that. But, what happens with most of us is that, in a lot of cases, that anger just doesn't turn off. We feel that immediate emotion, but that immediate emotion can sometimes continue to become a mood, or, for some of us, it becomes actually a state. We we go through our lives in somewhat of an angry mood, angry state rather. So again, the idea with negative emotions, anger, fear, sadness in general, is that they're designed by nature to be very short-term messages. They're meant to alert us as to a possible situation until our cognitive rational processes kick in. So, when we have a negative emotion, remember that. Once you've felt it and begun to think about the situation that brought it up, it's done its job, and there's no reason to feel it any longer. Okay. The next consideration is to understand goodness. Goodness really is what creates happiness. Goodness, that's Jonathan Locke came up with that definition. Basically, goodness is what creates happiness, and badness or evil is what creates unhappiness. And so, it's very important for us to be as good as possible. Happiness, sometimes we can derive some happiness in a way that doesn't consider the welfare of others. We could let's say spend our days, for example, trying to make a lot of money, trying to achieve some kind of personal success, spend many hours each day, but maybe be neglecting our family, our wife or our kids, and that's just, there are many ways that we can find happiness that aren't all that ethical. And that's not wise. I mean, for example, especially when one lives with others, when one has friends or others that are, very close to one, to the extent that one doesn't consider their happiness, emotions are contagious. If one is pretty much focusing on one's happiness and one's actions really are ignoring or neglecting the needs of others, and they become less happy, well, you're going to, the happy. How come I've got two camera lights here? I don't know which camera to look at. So, all right, thanks. All right. So the idea is when you're living with other people, it's very important. You have to understand that if you're not tending to their happiness also, if your behaviors and actions and all aren't helping them to become happy, and they become less happy, that's going to have a tendency to pull one down. You're going to have to work harder for your happiness. And there is, according to the research, it's easier to be pulled down to a negative emotion than to be pulled up to a positive one. So again, it's just very important to be good, to not just consider one's personal happiness, to understand that as we become happier as people, as a world, then it's going to be easier for us as individuals to become much happier. Okay, here's another belief. Just like believing that everything happens for the best, there's no way of proving it, we're all going to die. We're here 80, 90 years, 100 years, whatever, and that's it, and for many people that creates a fear, that creates maybe a sadness that, it's going to be over and stuff, and so when people die, we kind of maybe feel bad for them unnecessarily, and then we kind of have this fear of this unknown. But the reality, of course, of the situation is that we don't know what happens. And again, just like with the belief that everything happens for the best, it's just so much wiser, considering the fact that we don't know what happens, to simply believe that we go to a better place. To kind of develop and believe the happiest belief you can actually create for this condition. My personal belief is that we all go to heaven. That's the ideal situation. That's the ideal condition. So I choose that. I choose to believe that. And again, believing that that life is eternal, that when we all die we go to a better place, just eliminates that fear. As a matter of fact, it brings us it gives us something to look forward to, because life, we try to be happy, but life does have its challenges and stuff. But considering that we're looking to an existence that's much more pleasant, that's really something to look forward to. As a matter of fact, I used to study Orthodox Judaism, and I used to practice Orthodox Judaism, and a lot of the older men would actually have their burial shrouds in their closet. There was, according to the Talmud, to Jewish literature, this life here is kind of an entryway to a mansion or something, and then the afterlife is supposed to be a grand ballroom, so So again, there is a tradition, of course, in Christianity. I mean, we have the belief in heaven. So again, it's just believing that when we die, we go to a better place. Just makes it a lot easier to enjoy our lives here. Okay, desires are very important to our happiness. A lot of times we desire things that aren't, conducive to great happiness. Like, for example, fame or much more money than we need, much more success, prestige and all. And so it's wise to really try to have one desire. And that desire is, maybe two, that desire is to try to be as happy as one can be. And of course, to desire that others are as happy as they can be, because that's going to help us also. But, just having that one desire gives one's life perspective. It just reminds one of what life is about. That when we have that single desire, happiness, when we're very happy, we pretty much have everything that we want. Because again, this is biological. This is something that's totally biological. It's genetic. Okay. Let's see. I've got about 2 minutes left, and I'm going to go through a couple more briefly. One is that to seek happiness from within. Definitely appreciate it when it comes from others and from one's work, from doing things that one likes and all. But understand that happiness is something that we can control. That it's something that's within us, and when we have that perspective, that understanding, then we will not rely, even though we appreciate and benefit from external source of happiness, we'll know that the happiness is there whenever we want it, and that's very reassuring. That just gives us a lot of confidence and peace of mind. And the last thing I want to talk about is just the idea of liking everyone. I mean, sometimes we have a tendency, people are very important, and with like, for example, like music, with food and stuff, a lot of times we have a choice of what we like or not. Sometimes we have a certain tendency, but a lot of people know that, like with certain foods, they at first did not like them, but then they cultivated a taste for them. So with people, again, it's very important to like as many people as much as possible, because that, people are to a great extent what happiness is all about. Okay, well, that's all we have time for today. Thanks for watching. In the future, we'll explore other topics designed to help us better enjoy life. This is George Ortega saying, be good, think well, feel very happy. And I hope you'll join us again next time here on The Happiness Show.
Happiness is powerful. It's our underlying need. Happiness is why we live each day. Happiness is destiny. So let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy. Yeah, let's be so very happy.